This story is titled, After Years of Gaslighting, My Husband Confessed He Cheated during our couple's therapy session. But it was the therapist's reaction that destroyed him. You know that weird sense of calm people talk about just before a tornado hits? That eerie quiet when everything looks normal but your gut whispers something's coming? That's how I felt walking into our therapist's office that morning. I thought I was just dealing with the usual, passive-aggressive silence, cold shoulders, the kind of marriage that looks fine from a distance but is actually rotting quietly from the inside out. I had no idea that by the end of that 50-minute session, my entire life would split open, and not even because of what he confessed, but because of how our therapist reacted. That was the twist. For context, I'm Claire, 35F, married to Sean, 37M, for what feels like 100 emotionally exhausting years but is actually 12. No kids, thank God. Dodged that bullet. We do, however, share a mortgage, a cat who only likes me, and enough unresolved resentment to power a small city. We've been in couples therapy for 7 months now. That's right, 7 months of hell. Honestly, I wasn't even the one who pushed for it. Sean did. That should have been my first red flag. Men like Sean don't go to therapy to change. They go to perform change. To twist every argument into a sob story about how hard it is to be misunderstood, while their wives sit there blinking in Morse code for help. But hey, I wanted to believe him. Because I'm the kind of idiot who thinks maybe this time will be different. Maybe the man who once told me I lack empathy because I cried when my dog died but didn't comfort him after his boss criticized his PowerPoint. Maybe that man could change. Our therapist, Miranda, had one of those unnervingly calm voices, like someone who'd never yelled in traffic or Googled, "Am I in a toxic marriage or just tired?" She had this little clock on her shelf that ticked so quietly I could still hear it over the screaming in my head. It was a Monday morning. I had my coffee, my notepad, and a vague plan to bring up the passive-aggressive sticky notes Sean had been leaving around the house. You know, real romantic stuff like, "Would be nice if someone did the dishes." Instead, he beat me to the punch. We'd barely sat down when Sean leaned forward and said, super casually, "So I think it's time I just say it. I cheated. 6 months ago." Her name was Bree. Like he was ordering a damn sandwich. Now, let me pause here and say, I knew. I didn't have proof, but I knew. The sudden work events, the new cologne he started wearing even though I'm allergic, the way he showered before and after going to the gym. Please. I knew. But hearing him say it out loud, it still knocked the wind out of me. Not because of the cheating, but because of how proud he looked. Like he expected applause. Or maybe forgiveness on the spot. "I just want to be honest," he added, like that counted for something now. "And Miranda?" She nodded. Not sympathetically. Not in a validating way. More like curious. Studying him like a bug under glass. Then she turned to me and asked, gently, "Claire, do you want to respond?" I opened my mouth to speak. But she wasn't done. Or, she said, "Do you want me to tell him what I found?" Sean's face went pale. That's when I realized something. Our therapist had been playing a much deeper game than either of us realized. So there I was, mouth dry, pulse racing, heart doing that weird hiccup thing it does when your world tilts sideways, and instead of letting me scream, cry, or just full body lunge across the room with the force of 1,000 betrayed wives, Miranda calmly folded her hands and asked if I wanted her to speak first. Now, in hindsight, that was the moment I should have run. Or at least thrown the decorative rock she keeps on her desk, the one with the word breathe carved into it, straight at her ethically questionable forehead. But I didn't. I sat there like a stunned idiot, clutching my coffee cup like it could shield me from what was coming. Miranda turned to Sean and gave him this soft, almost maternal smile. The kind of look you give a child who wet the bed but tried really hard not to. Then she said, and I quote, "I think what's important here is understanding what led Sean to feel so emotionally isolated in the relationship that he sought comfort elsewhere." Now, forgive me if I blacked out for a second, because I swear I had a full-blown Fight Club moment, like I left my body and watched myself from the corner of the room. "I'm sorry." "What?" "He cheated, and I was suddenly on trial like I'd forgotten to water the houseplants of our marriage." Emotionally isolated? What does that even mean? The man literally installed a lock on his office door because my breathing distracted him while he was gaming. I let out a laugh. Not a normal one. One of those hollow, "Oh, I've officially snapped" laughs. Miranda didn't flinch. Just nodded, like I was confirming her diagnosis of emotionally unavailable harpy. And that's when I saw it. Sean. Smiling. Not a big, toothy grin. Not some nervous twitch. No. It was subtle, just a twitch of the lips, a tightening of his smug little jaw. But I knew that smile. That was the smile he gave me the first time he convinced me to apologize for overreacting to finding a flirty message from his coworker. That's the smile of a man who thinks he's winning. And suddenly it all clicked. This wasn't a confession. This was a performance. I looked at Miranda, her gentle tone, her absurd insistence that we both need to take responsibility, her total lack of follow-up on the whole. I slept with another woman for 2 months and just dropped it on my wife like a casual Tuesday anecdote. And it hit me like a freight train made of red flags. He bought her. Not in a literal, hand her a briefcase of cash kind of way, though with Sean, who knows, but emotionally? Strategically? Oh yeah. He'd been planting seeds for months. Spinning stories about my mood swings, my unreasonable expectations, probably how I once burned a frozen pizza and cried for an hour. For the record, it was a limited edition truffle mushroom pizza and I had PMS. Judge me. I sat back in the chair and just watched them. Like an audience member at my own trial. Miranda, calm, poised, delivering subtle jabs wrapped in therapeutic language. Sean, nodding thoughtfully, performing the role of hurt husband number 1. Me? The villainous ice queen who dared to ask him to put his phone down during dinner. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so disgustingly choreographed. So I did the only thing that felt appropriate in the moment. I smiled back. Not to him. To myself. Because suddenly, I wasn't the clueless wife anymore. I was the woman who just realized she's sitting on a goldmine of marital betrayal, professional misconduct, and, if I play this right, a future memoir that'll absolutely destroy their reputations. Let them think I'm broken. Let them think I'm falling apart. Sitting there, watching Sean nod along with Miranda like a kid getting praised for drawing inside the lines, I had what I can only describe as a highlight reel of emotional war crimes flash through my mind. It's funny how memory works, right? One moment you're trying not to scream at your husband and your traitor therapist, and the next you're reliving the time Sean accidentally forgot your birthday, then made you apologize because you'd set unrealistic expectations for emotional connection. There was the weekend I had the flu, real flu, fever, body aches, the whole horror show, and he told me I was emotionally draining because I asked him to pick up soup. He brought home clam chowder. I'm allergic to shellfish. His response? Well, maybe next time you could be more clear about your needs. Then there was that time my childhood dog died and I cried for 3 straight hours on the couch. Sean stood there, watching me sob into a pillow, and said, "You're being kind of dramatic, Claire. It's not like you gave birth to it." When I told him that was cruel, he said, "See? I can't even joke around with you anymore without you twisting it." Oh, and my favorite, truly the Oscar-winning moment, was when I caught him messaging his ex at 1 a.m., and he said, "I only reached out because you've been so emotionally distant lately. I needed comfort. You basically pushed me to do it. You basically pushed me to do it. Like I drafted a PowerPoint presentation on why you should emotionally cheat on me tonight." Back in that therapy room, I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. Miranda was still talking. Something about restoring trust through mutual accountability. Which, in this context, apparently meant me taking responsibility for Sean's penis entering someone named Bree. I cut her off. Okay, no, I'm sorry. What exactly am I supposed to be accountable for here? Not validating his fragile ego every time I blinked the wrong way? Not texting him a 3-paragraph affirmation every morning like he's a neglected houseplant? Miranda tilted her head in that textbook therapist way, probably preparing to say something about defensiveness being a trauma response. Sean leaned in, voice all soft and fake earnest. "Claire, I just want to feel safe being vulnerable with you again." Oh no. I snapped. Vulnerable? You lied to my face for 6 months, had sex with someone else, and came in here expecting a goddamn cookie for finally admitting it. What part of that screams vulnerable? You're not a wounded animal, Sean. You're a calculating little coward who paid this woman. I pointed at Miranda, whose face went into that tight, neutral freeze therapists do when they've been caught, to stage manage your redemption arc like this is some kind of Netflix docuseries. Miranda cleared her throat. "Claire, perhaps this anger is masking a deeper grief." Don't do the grief thing. I'm not grieving. I'm detoxing." Sean opened his mouth to speak, but I was already on my feet. Bag over my shoulder. Coat in hand. I looked at both of them, Miranda with her smug stillness, Sean with his startled "oh no, she's not following the script" face, and smiled. "I'm done here. Good luck with your shared delusions." And Miranda? Maybe don't cash the check until he actually earns the performance. And then I walked out. I didn't cry in the elevator. I didn't scream in the parking lot. I sat in my car, turned on ABBA, and let the irony of the whole thing wash over me. 12 years of emotional Jenga just collapsed in under an hour. And somehow, I felt lighter. So after storming out of therapy, I sat in my car for a solid 10 minutes listening to Gimme, 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 on repeat while visualizing Miranda's smug little face getting steamrolled by a rogue yoga ball. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just Sean being a cheating narcissist with the emotional depth of a bath mat. This was a setup. A full-blown, premeditated performance. And I wasn't just the betrayed wife, I was the damn audience. That smile he gave? That wasn't guilt. That was a guy who thinks the finale of his little puppet show went off without a hitch. Well, time to burn the puppet theater down. And I figured, why start with Sean, when I could warm up on his little therapy co-conspirator first? After all, appetizers exist for a reason. The next morning, I put on my best. I'm just a fragile woman trying to process a painful session voice and called the clinic to ask for a meeting with Miranda's supervisor. The receptionist was sweet. She booked me in immediately. Probably thought I was going to file a complaint about how I wasn't emotionally ready to face the hard truths or some other gaslight-flavored nonsense. Nope. I was there to drop a bomb wrapped in politeness and tied with a bow of receipts. Dr. Gordon, Miranda's boss, was one of those overly neutral types with round glasses and a deep, exhausted sigh in human form. He offered me tea. I declined. I wasn't there for chamomile. I was there for carnage. I'd like to report something, I said calmly. It's about Miranda and professional boundaries. Or, more specifically, the complete and total lack thereof. Then I told him everything. I mean everything. How Sean had started pushing us to see Miranda. How he mysteriously always got more homework than me. How Miranda constantly redirected blame toward me while using phrases like Sean's bravery and your resistance to accountability like I was a malfunctioning Roomba instead of a sentient human being. Dr. Gordon listened in that deliberate shrinky way where they don't react but their pin speed increases. When I got to the part about Sean smiling in the session and how Miranda practically applauded him for cheating on me, he blinked. Once. Then I pulled out my ace. I have a feeling you've got security footage. From the lobby. Maybe even audio in the waiting room. He gave me the kind of look therapists probably reserve for patients who say they can hear colors. I smiled sweetly. I'm just saying. You might want to check the tape from last Thursday. Around 3:15. Spoiler. He did. He asked me to wait outside. I scrolled through Instagram and thought about what I'd wear to Miranda's inevitable professional funeral. 15 minutes later, he came back looking like someone had punched him through a cardigan. He didn't say much. Just nodded and murmured, "We'll be addressing this internally." Which I believe is therapist speak for, "Oh, we're going to feed her to the wolves." But here's the kicker. He didn't have to say anything. I saw the footage over his shoulder when he left it paused on the screen. Sean in the waiting room, talking to Miranda, smiling, handing her an envelope. The same manila envelope he later used to serve me divorce papers like it was a party favor. I leaned in just slightly. "You know," I said, "it's weird. I've heard of prepaid therapy sessions. But I didn't know you could prepay the therapist's loyalty too." Dr. Gordon said nothing. But the way he closed his laptop so fast you'd think it was radiating STD energy told me all I needed to know. Checkmate, Miranda. I walked out of that office like it was a catwalk, head high, mentally deleting her contact from my life and replacing it with a burning trash emoji. As for Sean? Oh, he's next. And I'm not just going for his reputation. I'm going for his bank account, his mistress, and the IKEA furniture he still hasn't assembled properly. Stay tuned. So I figured that would be the end of it. Miranda, professionally incinerated. Me, emotionally caffeinated. Sean, completely unaware that I'd just torched his personal therapy puppet and was now moving on to bigger targets, like his job, his mistress, and potentially his hairline. But then, 3 days later, I got a call. Blocked number. Normally, I don't answer those, but I was bored, halfway through a bottle of Pinot Noir, and watching reruns of Snapped, so I figured, why not add a little chaos to the evening? I answered with the energy of a woman who's been emotionally wronged and is no longer afraid to commit mild tax fraud. Hello. There was silence. Then a sniff. Then, "Claire, it's Miranda." Now, I'm not proud of this, but my first thought was, ew, this is gonna be good. She launched into a breathy monologue so shaky it sounded like she was calling from inside a panic attack. Apparently, the clinic hadn't just addressed things internally, they dropped her like expired hummus. Fired. Reported. Reputation annihilated. Her LinkedIn bio still read, "Committed to ethical growth," which now felt like a comedy bit. She'd already lost 2 private clients and her license was under review. She was calling, she said, because she wanted to apologize. To me. For everything. Now, I know what you're thinking. Claire, did you laugh in her face? No. I let her speak. Because there's something truly delicious about watching someone who thought they were untouchable start unraveling like a clearance sweater from TJ Maxx. "I was manipulated," she sobbed. "He told me you were unstable. That you'd lied about everything. That he was scared of you." "Oh wow," I said, swirling my wine. "So I'm the terrifying woman who cries over dogs and burns frozen pizzas? God," I sound unhinged. "Did he warn you I might use sarcasm too?" She didn't laugh. She just kept sobbing. I thought I was helping him. And I needed the money. I know that's not an excuse. I'm so sorry. It was weird. I should have felt triumphant. Or vindicated. But I didn't. I felt amused. Slightly pitiful. And vaguely like I'd become the protagonist in a messy indie drama where everyone's morally bankrupt and the lighting is weirdly moody. Then she said the magic words. I want to make it right. I can give you everything. Notes. Messages. Session summaries. There are audio recordings. He asked me to document certain things in case you ever tried to take legal action. Well, I said, setting down my wine. So this wasn't just manipulation. It was a whole project. Was there a Pinterest board too? Mood. Betray your wife and gaslight her into therapy. I deserve that, she whispered. I know I do. You deserve a lot of things, I said. But I'll settle for the receipts. And just like that, I had a sobbing, disgraced therapist turned whistleblower ready to spill every dirty secret my soon-to-be ex ever confessed under the delusion of privacy. Honestly, it felt like Christmas, if Santa were a broken mental health professional who'd been bribed with envelope cash and guilt. We agreed to meet in person, somewhere neutral. I chose a public cafe. Not because I was afraid of her, but because I wanted a latte while she emotionally imploded. She showed up in oversized sunglasses like she was a disgraced Real Housewife, handed me a folder that looked like it could summon demons, and said, everything's in there. I didn't hug her. I didn't say I forgave her. But I did pat her shoulder and whisper, at least now you've actually helped someone. Then I left, folder in hand, smile on my face. Sean? Sweetheart, you're next. And spoiler, your ex-therapist just became my new favorite weapon. So now I had a therapist-shaped torpedo and a folder full of psychological confessions hot enough to melt my laptop fan. I had motives. I had means. I even had Miranda's notes color-coded with phrases like weaponized empathy and projection spiral. You know, fun scrapbooking ideas for your next divorce. All I needed now was her. The other woman. Bree. Or, as I came to call her, Miss Now. That's what I call Poor Judgment Volume 3. You'd think in this day and age, where people can't even order a salad without posting a photo, I'd find her easily. Instagram? Nothing. Facebook? Nada. LinkedIn? Ghost town. Either this woman was part of the witness protection program or she had the online footprint of a Victorian ghost. I even stooped to the darkest corner of the internet, Sean's Reddit account, which, by the way, was somehow more disturbing than the cheating. The man genuinely believed pineapple on pizza was a hate crime and had opinions about electric toothbrushes. I left that digital pit feeling spiritually soiled. Eventually, I gave up. Maybe she didn't exist. Maybe she was just a figment of Sean's midlife delusion, like his fantasy of starting a podcast called Alpha Instincts. But then, one beautiful, stupid, delicious day, I saw them. I was walking past that overpriced restaurant where waiters judge your outfit before seating you. And there they were, Sean and his new muse, seated on the patio like an Instagram ad for emotional betrayal and artisanal cocktails. She was pretty, of course, younger than me. Big eyes, nervous laugh, the kind of woman who probably apologized to her Uber driver for existing. And Sean? Oh, he looked smug, like a man who still believed I was crying into my cat and not quietly plotting his public destruction. I stood across the street, watching them sip from shared drinks like a couple in a dental commercial. And something in me snapped, not in a jealous way, in a strategic way. When Sean got up to take a call, which, knowing him, was either his mom or the HOA because someone's recycling bin was too full, I moved. I walked across the street like I belonged in a noir film, slid into the empty chair across from her, and said, Hi, I know this is weird. I'm Claire. You're dating my husband. She blinked, then frowned. Ex-husband, I corrected. I left him, emotionally, then legally. She stared at me like I was either about to explode or hand her a cult pamphlet. I smiled. Calm. Civil. Just enough crazy to keep her from screaming. I'm not here to fight, I said, sipping his water. I just want you to have all the information you need to make an informed decision. You know, like a woman's right to medical records. Except in this case, the illness is named Sean. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. Don't worry. I'm not going to spill everything here. I'm classy. Plus, you wouldn't believe half of it without documentation, which I have, by the way. Then I slid a little business card across the table. Just my name, phone number, and a handwritten note. Call if you want the truth. No judgment. Just facts and wine. She stared at it, then at me. Her hand trembled slightly as she took it. Also, I added, getting up. He cries during Pixar movies but not funerals. He never refills the burrito, and he once bought a white couch because it felt like a power move. You deserve better. But hey, your journey. I left just as Sean was coming back around the corner, deep in conversation with some poor soul about strategic branding. He didn't see me, but she did. And I could see it, the flicker of doubt, a crack in the fantasy. My work here? Just beginning. So I wasn't really expecting her to call. Honestly, I thought maybe she'd frame the card, pin it to a vision board titled Bad Decisions to Never Repeat, and keep drinking Sean's overpriced Chardonnay until she realized he was more Pinterest dad than partner material. But then, she did. 2:13 a.m., 3 weeks later. I was in bed, half asleep, halfway through an ambient dream where my cat was elected mayor, when my phone started buzzing with the tragic persistence of someone on the edge. I didn't recognize the number at first, but something told me, this is it. I picked up, voice gravelly, brain foggy. Claire, she whispered, shaky and tear-soaked, like she was calling from under a blanket of poor life choices. It's Bree. And just like that, I was wide awake. He screamed at me, she said, voice cracking. Over nothing. He called me unstable. Said I was just like his ex. That I was manipulating him by asking him to spend less time on his phone. Oh, sweetie. Welcome to level 2 of the Sean experience, emotional erosion with a side of gaslight vinaigrette. I sat up, flicked on the lamp, and said the most honest thing I've ever said. Oh, honey, he doesn't fight fair. He fights like a toddler with a thesaurus, loud, dramatic, and always convinced he's the victim. She sniffled. He said I was crazy, that I don't know what real love is. Classic, I said, stretching. Did he also tell you he's the only one who's ever really understood you, then make you apologize for how your face looked while you were crying? The silence told me yes. That hit a little close to home. So I told her. Everything. The manipulation. The cheating. The envelope. The therapist bribe. The therapy sessions where I was the villain and he was the misunderstood genius with emotional depth and the charisma of soggy toast. I thought I was losing my mind, she whispered. Oh, you will, I said, sipping from a water glass like it was whiskey. But only if you stay. And I don't recommend it. Because eventually you'll either end up crying in the produce aisle because he said kale reminded him of your emotional coldness, or you'll burn everything to the ground and come out better dressed and weirdly well-rested. She laughed. Actually laughed. First time I'd heard her sound human. So, what do? I grinned. You leave his fragile man-child ass. But first, you make fun of him online. Because listen, there's healing, and then there's posting a TikTok montage of his worst takes with lo-fi breakup beats and captions like gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. And reader, she did. 2 days later, her story hit Instagram. Screenshots of text arguments, a video of Sean yelling because she asked if he could put down his phone during dinner, and my personal favorite, a boomerang of her holding the exact same envelope he once gave me. Captioned, when you realize the man who accused you of being emotionally manipulative is just a mediocre liar with a podcast mic and a superiority complex. It went mildly viral. One of Sean's coworkers commented, "Bro, is this you?" And he deactivated his account within 24 hours. Justice, sometimes, looks like a mental breakdown in 1080p. Bree moved out a week later. She texted me a thank you and said she'd started therapy with a real therapist this time. One not allergic to ethics or boundaries. As for Sean, well, he lost his therapist, his girlfriend, and at least 1,200 followers. And last I heard, he was trying to rebrand as a self-help coach. Which is ironic, considering the only life he's ever improved is mine.